So as you can see, I've drawn my design onto the fabric and I have it into my hoop. And you can hear that I've got it in there so tight, it's as tight as a drum. I've already threaded my needle, like I showed you in the previous segment, and so we're ready to start punching. Now, the punching step is quite simple. All you do is punch in and out of the fabric. You want to make sure that you start with this little tail, about 1 inch long, and then you just, following the design on your fabric, you just punch the needle into the fabric as far as it will go, because that indicates how big the loops are going to be on the front. And then you just come out, barely move, and then go down again. And you just keep going. That's one simple stitch over and over again. And hopefully you can see that I'm leading with the front of the needle. That's the beveled side. And as I'm going around corners, I'm turning the hoop instead of turning my hand that has the needle. So you just keep going around in circles until you've finished doing that design. Now, there's a few mistakes that beginners make, and one of them is coming up too high when they come out of the stitch. So if you come up and you pull up high like this, you're going to be leaving loops on the front of your piece, or on the back of your piece instead of on the front. So you want to make sure when you come up, you just barely graze the fabric. The next thing people will do is go too far in between their stitches, and when you do that, you'll see that you leave a lot of space on the front. So remember, you're working from the back. This should look nice and even when you've got your stitches done. And then when you flip it over, this is the front. So you see here is where I was making my stitches too far apart. There's too much space in between them. And the stitches where I was pulling up too high on the back, they're too small on the front. So you want to make sure that you're pushing in as far as the needle will go, and you're not making too much space in between the needles, or in between the stitches. So you just keep going along until you finish that part of the design. And make sure you watch where your fingers are behind. The needle is quite sharp, and it will hurt if you poke your hand. So once you get to the end, you're just going to hold the threads down with your thumb, pull up on your needle, and then you just take your scissors and you just clip it right up against the fabric. You don't have to tie it off, you don't have to thread it through or anything like that. And the other ends that you've done as well, you're just going to clip them off too. Now, if you have spots that you've done stitches that you don't like, all you need to do is tug on one end of the thread and pull it right out. And you'll see, hardly leaves a mark. What you want to do is take your fingernail and scratch over top of the surface. That will make all of the weave of the weaver's cloth go back where it was to start with, and then you can just punch back over top again. So when you've finished a line, you can, or a design, you can pull it over, turn it over, and look at the front. And you'll see, especially in the heart area, that there's no weaver's cloth showing through. If there was, if I had left little spots that weren't quite as full, all I would do is, after I finished the whole design, is thread my needle with that color of embroidery floss, go to the back, and then just put some stitches in between the lines that I've already put in. Now hopefully you can see from this design that what you do when you're filling in an area is you go around and around and around until you've gone all the way around, and then you just keep going and filling in with lines. Now you'll see here that I didn't put my stitches right beside each other, and that's because you're using 3 strands of embroidery floss. And on the back, you're pushing it through. On the front, it fluffs open. So it actually takes up more room on the front than it does on the back, so that you don't have to put your stitches right beside each other. You can leave a little bit of space in between. So you just keep filling in, doing the small details first, then working up to the larger details. Then the last thing you would do is fill in the background. Now when I do my backgrounds, I often will use either the hand-dyed embroidery floss, or if I'm using the DMC floss, I'll use 2 or 3 similar colors and then just alternate with them. So that gives a nice hand-dyed look to the background.